we got a fantastic guest for a Tuesday evening. Just finishing his evening meal there. But you can't blame the guy because he's been super busy. And we're going to be talking to him fresh off of his return to pro wrestling after an 8-month absence from a quite terrible knee injury. But let's start by saying who's here. Amir Jordan is here, and Amir is here. Amir Jordan, great to have you on this live episode of Wrestling with Johners, episode 377. It's been a long time in coming, my friend, but how are you? And thank you for coming on the show.
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you. And you got my new thing in as well at the start. You were saying before, oh, what's your new thing? I'm like, well, there's this thing that worked the other week at BWR. Worked really well.
It did work really, really well. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the fans. We're going to talk about your return as well at BWR and what the future holds for the rebooted version of Amir Jordan. But before we get stuck into my very long list of questions for Amir Jordan, just a quick reminder, I think this is the 5th live interview of Wrestling with Johners in 2025, and it started back in January, early January, with Kid Lycos 2 coming onto the show live early January. A few weeks later, also in January, we had Hustle Malone, and that was a fantastic conversation, everything about Sacrifice Pro, and him very much rebooting himself after a bit of a layoff. Coming back in 2023, 2024, a couple of weeks ago, we had the spectacular twat Charles Crowley on the show for his second appearance, 3 years after he was last on the show. And what a fantastic interview that was, talking all about what's been happening over the last 3 years with Progress, becoming Progress tag team champions, his time over in Canada and all that good stuff. But last week, my most recent interview was with Liam Jones. A fantastic name on the scene who's really been coming into his own over the last few years. But Liam Jones, one of the best heavyweights in the UK. But please go and check that one out. But today, it's all about this guy here. And as we rightly said, who's here? Amir is here. And Amir Jordan, welcome to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. And I've got to say, as I mentioned during the intro there, you've recently returned about 10 days ago at a BWR show, Warning Shots from Cleethorpes to Memorial Hall. And it was an unannounced appearance, an unannounced return. Your first match after being kind of on the sidelines, shall we say, for 8 months following a devastating knee injury. But first of all, straight off the bat, how does it feel to be back?
Feels amazing to be back. Thank you for that great introduction. And your last few guests have been good as well. But 377 episodes is a long one because I've been watching a lot of your stuff online for a long time. It always pops up.
Good man.
You're like you're becoming the Chris Van Vliet of British wrestling with all them guests.
I try. But thank you. You're the first person to compare me to Chris Van Vliet, but I'll take that all day long. But I mean, how does it feel to be back? Because, you know, after such a devastating injury, and we'll talk about the injury in a moment, but after such a devastating injury and all the hard work that went into the recovery, you know, that grind, that process, getting you fit again, getting you well again, coming back through them curtains 10 days ago at BWR. Of course, you know, you was unannounced, so the fans weren't expecting you. But as soon as your music hit and you were hyped up behind that curtain and you made your entrance, how did that feel? What were the emotions like? What were the feelings like? What was going through your head? Certainly, just as you're about to step out and then to hear that roar.
I mean, you described it quite well there, to be fair. Like, it's weird. I've been doing this nearly 10 years now, and this is my third return from an injury. The first two was when I was at NXTUK coming back from my shoulder, and then obviously this one with the knee. Like, I think I've reached a point where, like, I look forward to wrestling so much that, like, it did. Don't get me wrong, it was a little nervous, and the drive down to the show was a little nerve-wracking. But I'm not going to lie, to be honest with you, at this point, not to sound like braggadocious about it, but I kind of knew what kind of reaction I was going to get. Like, I feel like I've been around long enough now to, like, know that, like, I feel like I'm quite established on the British wrestling scene. But obviously, the journey to get there, however, was, you know, that was difficult.
Yeah.
It was a few days before flying out to Canada for a tour that I was really looking forward to, actually. And like, I was working on some opportunities as well that ended up obviously having to be put on hold because of it. Yeah, it was tough. Like I was quite lucky to not have torn my ACL. So I didn't need surgery, but I needed extensive physio because it was quite a solid, like it was off a suicide dive. And then as I landed, obviously that the landing from the ring onto the floor is quite high. It makes you appreciate that, like all of these times when you don't get injured and people are doing a lot more crazy stuff than suicide dives, no one gets injured. And like when you actually think about it, it's like you're putting your body at risk. So yeah, like, you know, that was tough, but like the process of coming back was more of like more mental this time round, to be honest with you. It's different when you get injured when you're under contract compared to when you get injured when you're on the independents, if that makes sense. When you're on contract, you've got, you know, they pay for all the medical care, they pay for, you know, they pay you, they pay you your contract. Whereas when you get injured on the independents, it's a real, it stresses you out because like that's your wrestling gone. And especially when you're traveling as a wrestler as well, like you kind of have to sacrifice probably like a stable income, which then means you have less money, but you're getting to live your dream, and you might get to a point where you might get somewhere where you might get a contract, you might get your next deal. So like because of that, that's what it was difficult, like having to go back to work and having to go find a normal job, which is funny because the everyone that's listening to this or that's going to listen to this has to go do the same thing, right? So it's not, you know, it doesn't make me any different. But when you've enjoyed like 7 years of escaping that life and you've lived it and you've gotten a little taste from it, especially being on TV and then NXTUK being around all of that, I never thought it would be possible. But like when you get a taste, it's like an addiction, this business, man. Like when it gets in you, then it's hard. Like that's why a lot of people, it affects a lot of personal lives. You know what I mean? Because like for me at this point, it's an addiction more than anything, where it's just like I was just for the last 8 months, my dopamine levels were just jonesing for that hit of like wrestling's coming, if that makes sense. And I got it all in one go at BWR, and it was cool because it was a surprise as well. BWR is a place that I've been wrestling at since like 2017, before I even ever got signed or anything like that. I was very new to the business when I started wrestling there. So yeah, it was nerve-wracking. I got it on video as well, which was pretty cool. I wanted to make sure, and like that's the type of content that I want to start bringing up more. Is stuff from backstage or like, you know, genuine feelings. Like I put a TikTok out. It was probably about a minute before my entrance, just of me getting ready and stuff. And like you can see me like getting nervous. That's it. Yeah, yeah. That's me praying that. But like yeah, basically it was crazy because it was dark then, and like when I get out in that scene there, when I'm out, like the lights come on, and like it was a really cool moment to capture, and like I really want to start capturing more stuff like that, and then I think that's kind of interesting stuff that people want to see. But what all my feelings were, whatever they were there right in front of you to see. It was nerve-wracking, but honestly, once the bell rung, and you know, I've made sure I've been training up here at Rampage Brown School, so I'm based up in Newcastle. So the second I got clear to get back in the ring, I was at Rampage's school every Sunday for the last probably for the last 2 months, more or less since like after Christmas, getting ready to come back to make sure that I'm all good and my knee's all good and like the physio's going well. So couldn't have asked for anything better. It's, you know, honestly, like I have lofty aims in wrestling, but after the last 8 months, at this point, I've learned to take it one day at a time, and there's no guarantees in this business, and you've got to enjoy that day. I enjoyed that for what it was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask, when you were in the ring, you of course answered Ace Matthews' open challenge, of course, former guest of the show, a right pain in the ass, if you don't mind me saying.
Ace Matthews on here.
Oh, he was a nightmare. He was a nightmare, but no, I love him to pieces. Really love him to pieces. But you know, did everything kind of kick back in again? And I can only imagine that after the bell rang, you locked up. It probably felt like them 8 months away were like 8 seconds. Everything came back, I'm sure.
You know what? It was weird. Like those 8 months felt long. Like if I got injured in June. Like by the time we got to September, from June, I was just like, this feels like forever. I'm having to adjust, and I'm applying for jobs, and I'm, you know, going for interviews and stuff. And I feel like a completely different person. And like, I don't know if people understand it or not, like on the ground, boots on the ground as an independent professional wrestler, trying to make it work when you've got a mortgage and a family and all that stuff. Like it's difficult. Do you know what I mean? Especially trying to keep this thing alive during it when you're injured. it felt like the longest 8 months. But honestly, that day flew by, the match flew by, and like, yeah, I guess I didn't really know how to feel other than I'm just glad to be back, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just inching and itching for the next booking, just to get it again, just to get that next shot of, you know what I mean, that
That's
adrenaline.
it. It's a drug, isn't it? It's addictive. How did the knee hold up during the match? And
Yeah,
how were
it
you
was good.
feeling?
It was very good. So I've been on a very extensive physio program. I'm very lucky. I found a physio down in Chester Street, Aspire Physio, a man by the name of Adam Fleck. And he actually helped rehabbing some other wrestlers from the Northeast. Rampage Brown went with him as well. And he basically does a really good job of putting you back together, to be honest with you. But it was a very stringent, very disciplined physio program, and like the knee's feeling good now. To be honest with you, I was probably had a bit of an issue with my meniscus probably since January of last year, but I was running hard. I had another Canada trip planned. I was trying to make it, to the next opportunity, and you just keep going. So realistically speaking, that knee probably went when it had to go, because if I did get a big opportunity and my knee still wasn't looked after, it could have gone then, because I'll have been, on planes or like wrestling every weekend and stuff. So like I had to do a lot of like strengthening and single leg work and all that stuff. And like, it really, like, I've got pretty strong legs naturally, but it kind of made me appreciate like staying on top of it. Cause I feel like I was letting it slide a little bit. I was like, oh, I've got strong legs. I'll be all right. I'll never injure my knee. And then it happens, but that's just how it goes. You learn by screwing it all up, don't you? But yeah, no, the knee's great now. The knee's a lot better now. Yeah.
Here we go. And there was your opponent, and of course, locking up, and a packed crowd inside the Memorial Hall in Cleethorpes. Yeah. And of course, a picture that you posted on your socials, probably soon after the incident, soon after the injury, and soon after the operation to get you back.
That was a sad day. That smile is completely fake on the sofa. Oh, well, I'm not smiling, I guess, but
there we go. Some clips from your recovery, from the grinds, from the physio and the workouts, and getting that strength back, getting your legs and your knees as quick and as powerful as they were before, and of course your important weight training. But on top of all of that, you also found time to do work with Dan Bryden, didn't you? Now, I've spoken to quite a few guests on here that have worked with Dan, and not only were you kind of working on obviously the injury and recovering from that, but you also put in the work as far as kind of the look as well, and the physique as well, Amir, and kind of probably looking as good as you've ever looked. And like I say, here's some before and after comparison pictures which I've taken from your socials, and there's a contrast there. There's a stark difference between the picture on the left, the picture on the right, and kind of the Amir Jordan that we've got in 2025. Tell us a bit about that, because I think another big talking point coming out of your recovery, and certainly leading into your return, was this incredible physique that you were showing off to the world in 2025 as well.
Yeah, so you're very lucky that picture, that before picture, is from like November.
Really?
I got injured in June, and I depression ate for months. So if that picture was taken in, I don't know, maybe September, October time, or September time, that gut would have been a lot more. So at that point, that before picture there is kind of me working on my own type of, like, whatever I know about working out and dieting and trying to bring myself down. And it was around December time I got in touch with Dan. So I saw what Dan did with the likes of Miles Kamen and Leon Slater, and like working with Dan did wonders for them. Do you know what I mean? So I was just like, I should probably look into this now, because I've come far here, but I think I'm at a point where I can invest in my look more. And I feel like that's one of the things that I felt like coming back, I could turn a few heads with, and I could make a little bit more of a improvement on that front. And I feel like I was always able to do that, but I never quite did it. And working with Dan's really giving me that next push. Like, bro, he's strict. Like, he doesn't let you eat anything that isn't good for you. Do you know what I mean? But the best thing is, as you can see, that was 12 weeks worth of work, like even less than 12 weeks, because I did that photo shoot a couple of weeks before I actually finished my cycle. But like honestly, he's very good. He's very good, and working with him sorted me, like it sorted me out. It keeps me right. Do you know what I mean? And like I wanna improve in all aspects of the business, and I want to come back and I wanted to make sure that those 8 months that I spent on the shelf were spent thinking of, you know, how can I get myself in better shape? What type of promo can I do? What, you know, what catchphrases can I have? Like, I'm trying to show like that the 8 months that I've been out for haven't been okay. It's just that same person coming back, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. And
absolutely.
obviously in wrestling, it's a very aesthetic business. So like, I think that's one of the main things that was like, all right, if I can come back ripped, then that'll get something going. So I'm still working with him. I'm still on a plan. So like, that was at the back end of a leaning out phase. So like, he had me on like, by the end of it, I wasn't eating a lot of food. But now I'm slowly building it back up. So over the next couple of months, over the next 2 or 3 months and stuff, I'm trying to put on a little bit of muscle and size. So it's kind of nice because I'm looking like that at this point, and that's kind of like the smallest I'll be. And then we're gonna slowly build back up. So I've put my trust in Dan Bride, and it's well worth the investment, especially if you're taking this business seriously. And like me, you want to make it. Yeah, highly recommended.
I want to skip back to the return now. And when did you decide in your head that you were ready to make that return? And when did you first reach out, or when did BWR reach out to you about coming back on their show?
So I started getting messages about turning up to shows because there was quite a few big shows on last year in November. And I started getting messages about returning during that time. And at that point, it had been like maybe 5 or 6 months since my knee had healed up, and it just didn't feel right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, like some of the top promotions got in touch up north, and like it just didn't, like I was so tempted because I missed it so much, but I just knew like I've got to be adult about this. I've got to be mature, like don't rush into it. I felt like I could have back then, but looking back at it now, it wouldn't have been the smartest choice. I think once the new year came in, and I had been cleared to return to the ring by my physio just to train. When I went down to Rampage Brown School, like first week of January, I think that's when I knew like I'm ready to come back now. So then after that, it was just bumping. It's just, you got to get used to bumping. You got to get your body calloused up. You got to start, you know, practicing your strikes again, working your holds and like, you know, selling and all that stuff. And like just the performance element of it, because it doesn't come back straight away. It takes a while. So like 4 or 5 sessions in, yeah, felt ready. I think I timed it right, and like touch wood that like nothing happens now injury wise for a while at least.
Oh well, for a long while we all hope. For a long while we all hope, and we touched on it there at the top. But the reaction you got from the fans when you did burst through them curtains, when your music sounded, you burst through them curtains. Obviously, we've already said this. You were unannounced. It was an open challenge. But focusing on the fans, and they've always been in your corner. They've always backed you from day one for a long time now. But the reaction you got and how that must have made you feel, it must have been kind of made what was, it must have certainly cleared any butterflies or any nerves and made you feel like you were back in the game. But the fans have always been a big part of your journey, and they certainly were on that night as well. What did that reaction mean to you?
Mate, honestly, like that's the especially as a babyface as well, like that's the drug, innit? That's what you hope, and that's what you want to get. And I've got like, it's like I said, I finally got into a point where like I can be confident in what type of reaction that I'm going to get. So like I feel like the butterflies in my stomach weren't if they're going to come for me. The butterflies in my stomach were more about how am I going to feel, because it's felt so foreign after 8 months where I feel like my whole life's changed. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like since the first, like since 2016, 17, once I started hearing those reactions, and like I do like to think that consistently speaking, I do get one of the best reactions in British wrestling. Do you know what I mean?
Do.
Absolutely.
And like
a big part of that is my energy coming out, and like that's part of like that what's the word, the adrenaline filled entrance or whatever it is, because like that's me. That's what's actually like in my entrances. They're somewhat choreographed, but especially when I'm out on the stage and stuff, most of the time it's not. Most of the time, what you're seeing is the adrenaline just pouring out of myself, like dumb shit like that. Taking pictures with people and like, yeah, well, yeah, you've done your research very well there, but yeah, like I feel like in my entrance, that's it. Like that's what it's all about, and I feel like it's nice, especially on the indies, and that's kind of like my identity on the British wrestling scene, but. On the independents anyway, when I was in WWE, you have to do a very certain specific style, you know, and you've got time constraints. Whereas on the independents, my entrance is kind of part of my match. And the coolest thing is you never know where I'm going to end up. I might end up banging on the ceiling if it's possible. And like the coolest thing with the independents, especially in British wrestling, every venue you go to has a different, it's different, isn't it? You work in men's club, you go to a nightclub, you go to a camp show. So like, some venues are big, some venues are small, some venues you can do laps around, you know what I mean? Others you're tiptoeing and like you're doing whatever. So like, you know, that's what I miss. That's what I enjoy doing, is like going and like interacting with the crowd, because that's how you can get them to care about you, is if you go there and be yourself and be the best version of yourself there. If that kid wants a high five, you give him a high five. If like that group of adults are having a few drinks and you go over to them and you're like, you mad heads, you're off your heads. Do you know what I mean? Dumb stuff like that. And like, it's stuff like that I enjoy doing, because at the end of the day, that's people that have paid their hard-earned money for a night of entertainment, especially in an environment that's getting so much more difficult to do that as well, to actually spend money on entertainment. Like, you want to make sure you give them that experience that they wouldn't get at a stand-up comedy show, or like at the cinema, or even at a theater show. Like, they want to be up close and personal. Like, I get in people's personal spaces when I'm in my entrance because I'm hyped, just like they are, because I'm feeding off their energy. Yeah, and like if I'm showing the best, you know, if the adrenaline and the, you know, those feelings are pouring out of myself, it can be infectious.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, man, like you miss it. You just miss that connection, because that's what we do in wrestling, don't we? We have to. It's our job to connect with people, and like that connection you do miss when you're not. You know, you're not going to get that connection sat in your office job, are you?
Well, you're not missing it anymore, because you're fully back on the scene, and we'll talk about plans for 2025 and how busy you're hoping to be. But about a week before your return, a certain promo video drops. Now, I've checked, and you've done about 60,000 views across all platforms. It's absolutely doing fantastic. But I think more importantly, it was so unique. It was so different. Now, here's a few stills, because I do want you to add context to, you know, the thought process behind it, and the production, which was absolutely fantastic. The acting by yourself as well, my friend, was absolutely fantastic. But what it showed me was of this guy that's back in the real world again, but he wants to be back in that kind of addictive world, that addictive fantasy land of professional wrestling. And the final scene of you looking into your bag and seeing your gear there, and kind of the thoughts and the dreams and the desires and the wants to be back in the ring was clearly demonstrated from the humdrum world of the office and back into a professional wrestling ring. And that was all 7 days before your return for BWR. But tell us a bit about that, because it is quite a unique promo and a unique concept for a promo, different to what I've seen, to be honest with you. But obviously there's, like with everything, there's a lot of reality based in that promo as well. Tell us about the thought process and the concept behind that promo, and why it resonated with wrestling fans and probably your peers within the business as well.
Good question. And the way you've described the promo in terms of how it came across was exactly what I wanted people to see. And I wanted people to see it in like the most simple way possible. This promo. So like, I've had 8 months injured to sit and think about what I'm going to do next, right? Especially in wrestling. I didn't, not to take this away from anyone else, but I didn't want to return just with a graphic. Amir Jordan, here's my booking email. Yay, I'm back. I'm now cleared from my injury, and I'm back taking bookings worldwide, whatever, right? And I was like, I could do that, right? Probably would get booked quite a few places because I feel quite established now. But then like I was at a point where I'm just like, we live in this in this content driven era. Do you know what I mean? And professional wrestling is something that's the special thing about professional wrestling is you can tell your story and you can tell your art in many ways, right? We see promos from around the world, from independent wrestlers and on TV as well, that are all shot in different ways, that all have different contexts. And like, it's kind of it. It's like when you get into a wrestling ring, you can do whatever the hell you want as long as the people care, right? And that's kind of the same concept that I put into this promo, where I was just like, I can tell this story however I want, or however I picture it in my head. I just had to try and find a way of making it simple, short, concise, to the point, and all that stuff. I did a series of promos after I got released, and I learned a lot of lessons from that, especially with what people want to see and all that stuff. So kind of taking a lot of lessons from the past, and like looking at a lot of different ways that I could connect with people. Initially, I had it kind of as an idea when I was drawing it up in my head. I kind of was just like trying to bring, because I got this office job, so I was like, it'd be really cool for the next step of Amir Jordan, who everyone's seen as like happy-go-lucky, hyped up, whatever. We've told stories on TV, you know, and on the independent scene, like I'm known as like the happy-go-lucky guy, and like everyone loves it, fire, you know, all that stuff, energy. And that's great, but like every character has to evolve. And I felt like the best way for me to evolve and to add some more depth to that Amir Jordan that everyone's seen for the last nearly 10 years was that reality element of it. And I think we live in an era now where, especially for wrestling, people like stuff that's based in reality. And people like stuff that's genuine. And I'm like, in many ways, what the story that I told from that promo was a true story. When I got that office job in September, all I could think about was wrestling. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, what am I doing here? This is what's going on. So really, that 1 minute 37 video was just kind of a dump of what's been going on in my head for the last 8 months, really. Story wise, like I utilize the services of Alex Air, who does a lot of the videography for North Wrestling. So I've known Alex for quite a while. He did a really good job, like editing it and putting it all together. And like kind of taking all my crazy ideas and putting them all in one. I had like an idea of like, you know, in Matrix, when Neo sat at the office and he gets random secret messages from someone telling him that he's the one. And like, I was just like trying to base it on like, I had something like that. I had like Office Space, you know, that movie Office Space, or like The Office. You know, I took little bits from that, and like I wanted to take something from like, you know, Better Call Saul. Have you ever seen Better Call Saul?
100%, big fan.
You know, like where there's that black and white bit at the start where this guy's been this crazy millionaire, whatever, lawyer, doing all this stuff, but now he works at a Cinnabon. And like the idea started from there and kind of came further down, you know, taking all the crappy ones out of it. And then it kind of came into like this. So like I was working on like the script of it up until only a few days before we filmed the promo, but like it kind of started from taking stuff like that, which is, you know, people having to go in another world, do something that they're not meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And all they're doing is thinking about what they're supposed to be doing. Like Saul Goodman is thinking about his days. And, you know, there's little reminders that he gets throughout the show that remind him of his time, you know, time being the lawyer. And like Neo gets these little reminders. Well, they're not reminders, I guess, but Neo from Matrix is like, this is not what you're meant to be doing. You are the one, kind of thing. So like, that's kind of where it all came from. And
yeah,
like it all fit in the end in terms of what it is that I'm trying to bring across, which is like, I feel like the thing that people could relate to is that we all have jobs that we have to do. We live in an ever-changing financial environment where like, I feel like everyone's savings are just coming down, further down, right? It's getting more and more expensive. And like, there's a lot of people in today's world that are having to put to one side their hopes and dreams just for financial stability. In many ways, I kind of got a little taste of that over the last 8 months, where I was just like, there was times where I was thinking, well, if this knee's not good, I'm going to have to give up this dream of mine. I'm going to have to, you know, just try and focus on trying to make as much money as possible, or go back to finance or whatever. And, you know, that would be fine because that makes me just like everyone else. But, you know, there's that one thing that's always missing. And that's kind of the point that I wanted to get across with this promo, is that everything is fine. Like my bills are paid, my mortgage is paid, my wife's, do you know what I mean? My relationship's good, but there's just, do you know what I mean? There's just that thing. And I wanted to leave it kind of open-ended at the end, where it's just like, you know, I've got to do this, but I'm doing this so that I can wrestle, so that I can live my dreams, so that I can get somewhere. So it's kind of I'm thinking about maybe doing some more, to be honest with you. But that was kind of the start of this guy's journey of, well, this is my life, this is my situation right now. What am I going to do from here? How am I
You
going
could
to?
do a whole series, you know. You could do a part 2 following on from that, and a part 3 following on from that, and people will follow your journey from the shirt and tie back into the trunks and the
Yeah.
boots. But who knows? Who knows?
Hopefully it's like a promo where I've gotten a sick contract at a big company, and the promo just is me walking in, handing my resignation, handing in my lanyard, and just walking out.
There we go.
20 seconds.
Let me ask you about that, because now that you're back and now that you're feeling great and you're looking better than ever, but you are kind of back in the rat race, so to speak, you know, with a 9 to 5 job. But obviously, as the promo told us, and just from speaking to you, you know, you lived this dream within WWE and NXT UK. The last 8 or 9, close to 10 years of your wrestling journey, you know, has given you pretty much everything you wanted. But now you are kind of doing a 9 to 5. What are the dreams and the desires going forward now that you're back? Now that you're possibly the best version of Amir Jordan, you know, physicality and with all that experience and all that skill that you've learned over the years, you know, where do you go from here?
I don't even think I've scratched the surface of what I could potentially do in terms of like I feel like I'm still a new wrestler, if that makes sense. I still feel like I'm quite fresh. I still feel like there's a lot of places for me to go just in British wrestling. I feel like I'm ready. You know, I started my training at Progress Wrestling back in 2016. Do you know what I mean? I wrestle for them at a variety of their shows. I want to come back. I want to come back to the place that I started. I think there's still a lot of really cool stories that can be told there. I want to start wrestling more in Europe because I've gotten a little taste of that as well, and I want to start going out in Europe. Watch this space. At some point I'll see myself in Canada again. Ultimately, I've not been fully sure of this for the last 8 months, but I am sure of it now. Like, I know I'm going to get something, and I want to sign another contract because I've done it once, and I've got to almost kind of prove to myself that I can do it again. And I want to be able to do it again whilst dealing with an independent wrestling career, whilst dealing with a 9 to 5 job and doing all that. Because I genuinely believe that my 4 years in WWE, but even my body of work at this point right now, I feel ready for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of itches to scratch, to be honest with you. There's British wrestling's doing in a good place right now, and there's British wrestlers that are seen as like the best wrestlers in the world, whether it's in Japan, whether it's in TNA, whether it's at WWE. Like, it's the British wrestlers that are at the top. I am a British wrestler. I'm trained in the British style by some of British wrestling's best. I've trained at the Performance Center for 4 years under some of the best wrestlers. I feel like in the ring, there's a lot more that I can show that I feel like if given the platform, I can do it. I know I can, especially with the connection that I've got with the fans. There's a lot, man. There's wrestling's always on. Wrestling's in a great place. I want to jump right into it. And yeah, there's places that I've got to tick off.
Absolutely.
I'd love to come have a run at Progress Wrestling because that's the place where I started. I did ring crew at the Electric Ballroom in 2016, watching Mark Haskins versus Will Ospreay in a main event. Skinny little me stood there. Do you know what I mean? That's where I kind of started my whole career. I've never gotten to wrestle at the Electric Ballroom, but I've done like the Garage. I did the one in Sheffield. That entrance was cool because I did the one in Sheffield. That was at Snowgrass, if you remember that.
Yeah.
I got onto that show last minute too. A lot of my big opportunities have come last minute, but I was just like, I've got to smash the hell out of this entrance. That was crazy because that was the show that got the ball rolling for WWE because that's where they noticed me first as well. And I was actually getting ready for a tryout off the back of my performance on that show, which then led me to getting on NXT UK. So it's kind of weird that it worked out like that. But yeah, honestly, mate, like I want to be those are like some of the, especially getting the next contract and all that stuff. Like sometimes a lot of these things are out of your control in terms of when they will happen. You have to look at what's in your control and what's in front of you. That's why, like, I had to look at, okay, well, the shape that I'm in, that's in my control. The type of content that I put out, that's in my control. Getting booked this next weekend, that could be in my, do you know what I mean? So I'm just taking it one step at a time.
Being the master of your own destiny and kind of, picking up the ball and running with it.
This, you know what it is? Like, I've been nearly a decade now, and I've kind of, it's weird because when you're running hard in this business, like, you do get that certain level of grizzled, and I feel like I've gotten that grizzle now. I've got a little gray in my beard too. You get that, you get grizzled, and part of being grizzled is the stuff that you have to put up with in wrestling, right? The opportunities that may or may not come, the promises, the person that in that promotion that liked you, that could have gotten you an opportunity, but that's no longer there anymore. So you have to just carry on. There's so many little things that can, like, and ask a lot of the wrestlers that have been doing it for 20 years. There's so many opportunities that you can feel like are nearly there, but then they get taken away somehow through no fault of your own. Like, I'm in a very lucky position that within the first 2 years of wrestling, I got signed to a contract. Throughout many conversations with a lot of wrestlers during this last 8 months, one of them told me, they go, well, how long did it take you to get signed? And I said 2 years. And he was like, oh, well, were you in NXTUK for the whole period? I was like, yeah, episode 1 to episode last. And then he was just like, well, that's the issue there. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you got a big break very early in your career. So now for the rest of your career, until you get to that level, you're always going to chase that because that's your standard that you've kind of set. And in a weird kind of way, it brought a lot into perspective, because when I got released from NXT UK, my thing was, right, okay, what am I doing next to try and get to that point and trying to get to that level? There's a good thing and a bad thing to that. It's good because it means that you're ambitious and you want to get to a higher level, and you want to keep pushing. Sometimes it can become a bit obsessive as well, and I've got a habit of being a bit obsessive as well. And you got to find the balance.
You mentioned some very important things there. Like I say, you've obviously got the experience, you've got the skill, you are grizzled now. You've been through the rough and the smooth, so you've kind of built up that kind of tough exterior of being able to kind of deal with the rough and smooth. And most importantly, I think you've got the right attitude as well. You've got the right positive mindset. And looking at all opportunities as an opportunity. I do want to skip back because you mentioned about kind of the stints you had with Progress early on in your career and getting signed very early as well, maybe only 2 years into the business and getting signed with WWE. In a lot of cases, that's pretty much unheard of. But give us a bit of a picture and a bit of an outline as far as the timeline as to when that happened, because obviously in 2017 we had the very first United Kingdom Championship tournament, and then kind of UK talent were getting signed by WWE, but there was nothing concrete. There wasn't a TV show. And then the summer of 2018 rolls around. You have the second NXT UK Championship. I suppose it was a number one contenders tournament ready to face Pete Dunne at the Royal Albert Hall. And then there was the announcement of the NXT UK brand on that same show, and the TV tapings announcement as well. Now, you were kind of in and around the Royal Albert Hall era, weren't you? Kind of when that you could say the second tournament timeline. Was that roughly when you got signed?
Yeah, I mean, crazy time, man. Honestly, looking back at it now, it, like, knowing what I know about the business now, and knowing the things that I appreciate now, I wish I knew that stuff back then, because I would have appreciated what it was. I don't even think I knew the severity of what I'd done, if that makes sense. Like that, I don't know how else to put it. Like, I started at the Projo back in the day in like mid 2015. So I did 6 months there, then I did 6 months in Canada. I came back and British wrestling was at its all-time high, and I felt like I came back at the time that, mid 2016.
Yeah.
I think there was two things mixed, and I feel like I just timed it just right, and like maybe it was by design, but like the opportunities were all there for a new young wrestler. There was shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Do you know what I mean? And like there was opportunities everywhere. There was multiples of shows on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday. I just feel like I had the right attitude at that time. I had the unique gimmick and the unique character as well that wasn't really there. I don't think anyone really at that time in British wrestling was ever going to come out to Punjabi MC other than me. Do you know what I mean? Right? Those things mixed in together with all of that meant that I gave myself the best possible opportunity, and the opportunities were there not only to wrestle but to train with the best as well. Because when I wasn't getting booked, I don't know how I was doing it, mate, honestly, because I was working a full-time job back then too, and I'm just like, I'm 34 now. I'm like, I don't know how I was doing that. Still getting the gym and still doing all that stuff. I think, like you said, it's an addiction. So like for me, it is. For me, I don't think I'll ever quit. Do you know what I mean? But I just hit it. I just hit it at the right time. I caught that peak, and then it was 2017, like you said, when the first UK tournament happened.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, when I saw that, obviously, as someone who had just gotten in there, even at that point, I don't even think I debuted for North yet at this point, or like Rise even. Like I was just finding my feet in British wrestling. I saw that and I was like, if they're interested in the UK, that to me felt like a million miles away at that point. I was just like, maybe if I just push hard and I try and wrestle as much as I can, you never know, right? Obviously, what ended up happening but for that year, again, like I ended up quitting my job. I went on the camps because I got an opportunity to go work the Butlins camps and the Mega Slam camps, and I was getting booked on the indies and like started selling some merch, wasn't making any money. And it's crazy, man, because that 2017, that whole year, I was so busy wrestling because of the fact that there were so many opportunities. It was like Tuesday night graps on Tuesdays. Defiant was doing tapings on Mondays. It was crazy, man. Looking back at it, it was wild. But if you caught that, you know, that tidal wave, you're on. And I just got into that habit of it, and I was getting reps in. I was getting better every week. I was getting more over every week. I was starting to get bigger opportunities and stuff. And yeah, like I said, it all kind of culminated in December of that year at that Snowgrass show that I turned up just to help out at because I wasn't booked. And at that point, I was about to run out of money. I was actually going and speaking to recruitment agents in Leeds because I was living in Dewsbury at the time in Yorkshire. Because I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go get a job now because I'm running out of money. So I'll keep this wrestling thing going and I'll go get a normal job. That Snowgrass show happened. WWE got in touch with me after that about a tryout. I kept running hard. I got offered ITV to do World of Sport. Didn't even have to do the tryout. And from December to April or May, was it? Within 5 months, I had a email in my inbox saying we'd like you to be part of this second tournament. At that point, there was no contract on offer, but like that was. I don't know how to describe it because it was unbelievable. I remember at the time, there were names getting thrown about because rumors started and stuff, and they were like, oh, they're going to do a second tournament, and people were throwing big names out: Zach Gibson, Flash Morgan Webster, Dave Mastiff, like all these big names, and no one was mentioning my name because no one expected it because I'd not even been wrestling that long. Like I feel like I'd made a good splash on the scene, but not that much. I'm not Brock Lesnar, do you know what I mean? Like getting signed that quickly. So like when I got that email, and then honestly, mate, like I had run out of money. We went down to the O2 to get our medicals done and to sign our contracts and stuff. And even though our expenses were paid, I didn't want to go in my overdraft. I still booked a mega bus down, 15 quid from like Wakefield Woolly Edge to King's Cross. And I got like the tube across to the O2 arena and stuff. Like I was skint because I'd put everything into wrestling. If I'm honest now, like I had no money, but I was the happiest I'd ever been. Do you know what I mean? Like I can't. Kind of talking about it now is kind of bringing back the perspective of what I feel like I should have had back then because I've got that perspective now.
Yeah, that comes with time, doesn't it? That will comes with experience and time,
100%, 100%. And like
you're not going to know that straight away.
I was in many ways intimidated in a dressing room that had like Pete Dunne, Dave Mastiff, Mark Andrews, Tyler Bate, Trent Seven, Jordan Devlin, and all these guys, Joe Coffey. Do you know what I mean? Because those were.
Did you feel like the new kid on the block? I mean, you mentioned some names there, but that locker room, you know, the best of the best.
Know who I was. A lot of them didn't even know who I was. I'd not even met a lot of them before. Do you know what I mean? I mean, most of them. I mean, to be fair, most of them I did. There was a few that I didn't, but I would not been around for that long. So you've got guys in that locker room that have known each other since 2006.
Sure.
And like I got along with everyone, and like I've got a good rapport with a lot of my colleagues and stuff. But like I've just not been in the business that long, so for me, I'm sat in a WWE locker room. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm shitting myself That first
Wild.
day that we went to get our promo shots done, and they were doing, the moving shots and all the slow-mo stuff, and we got our pictures done, and like the main roster started walking in, and then we ended up going to the ring and all that stuff. Like, that is a young man right there. That is, honestly,
He looks dead happy.
oh man, this is what I'm saying. Like, it couldn't have been going better for me within the first 2 years. Like, I got signed to a WWE contract within the first 2 years of my career. I couldn't, like, that was at Royal Albert Hall. Actually, you were speaking about Royal Albert Hall. We turned up, like, the next thing couldn't be topped by the next. You know what I mean? The next thing kept getting topped and topped. There's me stood behind Triple H. It was cool. It was the best. I got myself right in the middle there.
Some great pictures, some great memories.
Mate, honestly, like, every moment just kept getting topped by the next at that point. It was ridiculous. And like, it was, at first it was getting the email, then it was getting to go down and be around the main roster. We were taking pictures, and I did like this pointy pause, and I had my hand here, and Baron Corbin walked past, and he goes, "Get your hand away from your face. That's a moneymaker." And I'm just like, yes, I will do that. I'll move my hand there, but as if that just happened. You know what I mean? Like, silly little things like that. And actually getting into a WWE ring, I think on the first day or the second day, I think it might have been the first day, Robbie Brookside had us and doing some stuff whilst we were getting set up for Raw. I might have been SmackDown, so it might have been the second day, but it was crazy. And then doing the tournament at Download Festival, wrestling Zach Gibson, actually getting to wrestle for the WWE, then being on the show, then getting offered the contract. It was, yeah, like, thinking about it now and actually talking about it now, I don't think I knew how to take it in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to bring up some more pictures. This was the poster advertising the 2 nights at the Royal Albert Hall, of course, and then of course they announced NXTUK and the TV product. There you are, in your finest wares there in front of the NXTUK banner. But let me ask you, and let me bring up a name, and of course there's a picture of you doing one of your entrances. But this guy here, Kenny Williams. Now, you mentioned that you were part of episode 1 of NXT UK all the way through to the very last episode, and a gentleman, a guy, a talent that was intertwined with your journey, with your story, is Kenny Williams, of course. And they pretty much paired you up straight away, didn't they? And you were a tag team from the off. And from what I can recall doing my research, you hadn't been involved in too much tag team action before joining WWE NXT UK, and you'd certainly not worked with or against Kenny in any way, shape, or form. So this was a brand new pairing, and in front of the TV cameras, I suppose there was some pressure on you and Kenny to gel almost straight away, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, before that, I'd done a bit of tag team stuff. Like, I spent a summer tagging with Robbie X on the camps. Do you know what I mean? At the Butlins and stuff. So I'd done a little bit of tag work. I'd never met Kenny. We'd never met each other before NXT UK, and we did kind of just get thrown together. And you know, we found a way to make it work. We found a way to make it work with the Odd Couple tag team. We ended up wrestling every tag team on the roster, barring I think Trent and Tyler. We didn't wrestle because they ended up going out to Florida a lot more. We ended up getting out to WrestleMania week and actually wrestling at WrestleMania Access on one of the NXT UK tapings. We wrestled for the tag team titles a bunch of times. Obviously that 4 years we had that story. I mean, we still had a story that was unfinished even at the end of the show. I feel like I'm quite proud of that because we were obviously not a main focal part of the show, but we were a part of the show over those 4 years that was required, which is that Odd Couple, Rush Hour, bit of a comedic element, bit of entertainment, because that show was filled with a lot of Pete Dunne, Ilya Dragunov, like hard hitting, solid, technical stuff, like, and that was all great. And I'd have loved to been able to show off that side, but really, I think where we found our niche was being the entertainment on the show, being the underdog tag team, which, for the first couple of years, we started off as that. But as that show went on, we became legitimate contenders for the tag team titles, right? And we, like I said, we were part of a tag team division that was actually quite deep. You had some really good tag teams in there. And we got to wrestle all of them. Yeah, like Mandrews and Flash, Pretty Deadly when they first came in. Yeah, there's a bunch like Oliver Carter and Oro Mensah, who wrestles as, and Ashton Smith. So
Yeah,
in and amongst like
GYV, the whole lot.
yeah, we wrestled GYV a lot as well. Yes, absolutely. The whole lot. It was great.
But you
Like I
guys had a
said,
good run. You guys had a good run as a tag team
and
through
we
the
got to
back
do
end of
single stuff as
2018
well.
through 2019 into 2020.
Mhm.
You guys had a good run. I know that there was 1 or 2 injuries in there which kind of
Yeah.
delayed things, but you guys, I think through all of 2019, I don't know if you realize this, but from late November 2018 all the way through to early 2020, so over a year, I think you guys went undefeated.
Yeah, we went on a win streak. Yeah, we did.
You
Yeah,
did?
exactly. And that's what ultimately led to getting the tag team title shot. It was cool because in and
Yeah.
amongst that 4 years, I mean, like that's one thing that I do take as a proud achievement was being part of a WWE show from start to finish and being a part of it that people remember that wasn't necessarily something that had a title involved. If that makes sense. We had tag title matches because we got to that point as a tag team. We were quite creative with like the vignettes and the entertaining promos that we filmed. We did single stuff during that time. I wrestled JD McDonough for the Cruiserweight title. I'm pretty sure Kenny did a bunch of stuff. I think he wrestled Finn Balor at one of the live shows as well. So it was, we from 2 people that had never met each other to achieve that on a WWE product on that level. Like I'm quite proud of that looking back at it now. By the end of NXT UK, I wanted more, and we weren't wrestling as often as I would have liked. And you're in wrestling, I feel like you're always frustrated at something anyway. I've come to learn that now. A lot of feelings I might have had when I got released, those feelings aren't there now because you learn and you understand and you mature into the business. Those 4 years were like a crash course for like my maturity in the business and knowing how things work at the highest level, knowing how things should be done and learning. And that, being part of the show on a consistent basis, like when I wasn't injured, I was always consistently booked on that show. And for someone that had only been wrestling for 2 years before I got signed to be able to get to that level where I'm being consistently used on a wrestling show, it was a massive achievement for me. Like there were some wrestlers that got to NXT UK after like 15 years of graft. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, for most of that part, and I'm happy to say it. Like I was happy to be there, and I was happy to learn, and I looked at it as more of a learning opportunity. And as much as I showed in the final product and in my performances and stuff, I learned so much about performing at the performance center because that's where I spent so much of my time as well. That whole experience, honestly, like 2 years on now, knowing how the wrestling business works, that was an amazing experience for someone in my position.
Yeah. We're going to bring up some more pictures because we briefly mentioned this tag championship match. I think that may have been the match where things went south between yourself and Kenny. You had the loser leaves NXT UK match, no disqualification, and then of course a little way down the line we saw this guy here, Tiger Turan.
Yeah,
but I mean, obviously the doors closed on NXT UK a couple of years ago now. And what were the emotions when you heard the news? I mean, I don't know whether there was rumors going around the locker room beforehand amongst the talent, but for my mind and for a lot of wrestling fans' money, NXT UK was putting out a solid product every single week. There was a certain point in time where it was easily delivering the best hour of wrestling pretty much anywhere with some of the matches you were getting. Thinking back to Pete Dunne, Walter versus Dragunov, and some of the tremendous, some of the takeovers, the UK takeovers were easily up there with some of the best wrestling shows of that year. It was solid action, great storylines, and it really introduced the world to what British and European wrestling had known all along it was the best on the planet, and it was a hotbed for a reason. And you were part of that during them 4 years.
Yeah, mate. Honestly, like look at where most of the people have ended up from that era. I mean, it seems like half of them got onto either NXT or the main roster. But like it's like I said, for me in my position, that was an amazing 4 years. And off the back of what I've learned over those 4 years, I can now go and get booked anywhere in the world if I wanted to. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a big part of my NXT UK exposure is what helped me get bookings in Europe and get booked in Canada and all that stuff, because you're on a big platform. So like the fact that I performed on that big platform shows everyone that, well, he can do it, which then means that if I've got the right attitude and if I've got the hustle after getting released from WWE, like I think we're in that era now anyway, where there's so many, you see Matt Cardona or Mustafa Ali or Cody Rhodes did it when he got released as well. Like,
Yeah.
for someone like me in my position, these are all amazing examples to look up to.
Look at Drew as well. You know, Drew got released,
exactly.
spent a few years on the indies, and now he's
yeah,
putting out the best work.
It's a different business now. It's a different business now to what it's been for a long time, because WWE is on Netflix. There's AEW, there's TNA, there's other companies like MLW, NWA. There's all sorts, and like the independents are going so well too. So like, you know, it's one of them ones where the one cool thing that I got to do was wrestle for TNA as part of their UK tour. So that was really cool, because I was working on getting in front of them as well. And that was really cool because I got to wrestle Rich Swann at the Coventry show there. But, you know, that was somewhere where there could have been an opportunity. AEW is where there can be an opportunity. Sky's the limit, really, in many ways. A lot of these international promotions are where there can be opportunities. A busy schedule, getting to travel around the world is something that's quite attainable for a wrestler like myself. You know, that's where the Canada idea came from, because I was just like, okay, well, I want to do something different post NXT UK. I came back to the UK indies and, you know, I felt like I was having a good run. Even at that point, I feel like there was at that point, I felt like I had something to prove in the UK in terms of, you know, you asked me about like what the next level is. I feel like the next level for me is to be able to be a champion and carry a promotion. That's something that I've not done. I feel like I've always been looked at as an entertainment value who can also have good matches too, but I've never been given that opportunity of being put in the main event or like wrestling, because I know I can do that style. I know that I can back myself to be able to pull through and get the reactions out of a crowd from that level. So like, you know, I had a good run after that, but I needed something different. I wanted to go to a new territory and learn a new whole kind of thing and travel as well. And like I got that through Canada, and some of the connections that I made out in Canada mean that I can come and go as I please. Really, like that ended up becoming a second home for me. When I went to Canada the first time in 2023, I went for nearly 3 months. And there wasn't one weekend that I was free. I didn't have one weekend free. I was getting flown around as well, getting to stay either on someone's couch or in a nice hotel or wherever it was. But I wasn't complaining because I was getting the wrestling and I was getting over in a new territory, because we don't have territories anymore, do we? Before, that's what it was, right? You wrestle in America, correct. You go to a different territory, you go get over somewhere else. And I feel like that was a good place for me to go to.
And it's a strong scene. I mean, I recently had a couple of weeks ago, Charles Crowley, I mentioned at the top. He's become a favorite over there, you know, certainly for Smash Wrestling and one or two others. So it's a strong scene. And I think a lot of people kind of think of, you know, Canadian wrestling, they think of the Hearts and they think of one or two others, but they can't really name a certain promotion or any other, you know, indie stars that you know, the grind on the Canadian scene. But I think it's certainly a growing scene and an exciting scene, and it's a big country. There's, you know, a lot of companies out there to work for, and you've certainly had a lot of fun out there, haven't you,
mate? Well, that's it. Again, I got to be very lucky, and I'm very thankful to be able to go out to Canada and be a part of that growing scene. Very similar to when I came back from Canada to the UK, and I, you know, rode that wave. The Canada's such a big country, but also there are a lot of really good promotions out there across the place, and you know, a lot of the internal flights are actually quite reasonably priced, so you can get flown around quite a lot. But yeah, places like C4 is one of the best promotions I've wrestled for ever, to be honest with you. It's based up in Ottawa, and they've got a hot crowd. They've been running for years. Like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens used to wrestle up there. Do you know what I mean? You know, Smash Wrestling, like you mentioned, Smash Wrestling have looked after me a lot. There's Winnipeg Pro out west. I mean, I started out west initially anyway in Calgary with Lance Storm, so there's a bunch of promotions out there. Like, honestly, when I went out, I was honestly taken aback by how well I got treated and how busy I was kept, and some of the people that I met along the way. You know, there's it's kind of being a Canadian wrestler and being a British wrestler. We're quite relatable to each other because we both have that struggle of trying to get down to America. It's really hard for Canadian wrestlers. A lot of them try and cross the border and they can get banned, and there's all those risks to take. But like, it's almost even harder being a British wrestler because you've got to get yourself to that side of the world first. Then, do you know what I mean? So like for me, I'd love to wrestle in America one day, but for me, it was like, let me get myself over there. The good thing with Canada is there's a lot of good exposure you can get. Like I got to train and run sessions at Battle Arts Academy, which is Santino Morella's school. So I've ended up developing a little relationship there and having a place to train. And, everyone's so welcoming there. And, I feel like they respond to seeing someone with a good attitude and someone who wants to work hard, who can have good matches and get over. And like, they'll reward that out there. So like, yeah, it was initially thought of in my own head as an idea of fresh coat of paint, new territory, go get over in front of like I got to meet so many people because a lot of the American wrestlers can come up to Canada and work. So you do get a lot of exposure to a lot of the American wrestlers, especially ones that have been on TV, the ones that tell the best stories, the ones that give the best advice. So, it was good even in the locker room to be around, Cardona was there one time. Loads. Like I've been on shows with Mustafa Ali. I've been on shows with, some of the Josh Alexander, Speedball Mike Bailey. I mean, they're Canadians. They're on those shows, but it's good experienced people to be around, to pick their ear, to be in a car with them, to travel with them, to get advice from and all that stuff. So honestly, the Canada thing's been, if it all ended for me tomorrow, it'd be great. Canada's like a little cherry on top of something that I got to achieve in an era of my career where it could have gotten quite difficult, especially after the release and like trying to work towards the next opportunity and stuff. I'm a big believer in like, if it doesn't come to you, you have to go to it. In many ways, as busy as I was in British wrestling, there were certain things that I wasn't happy with. And instead of bitching online about it or bitching to my wife about it, I was like, all right, I'm going to go do something about this, because if I'm not getting what I want here, I'll go somewhere else to get it, because that's what I did when I quit banking to do wrestling in the first place. I'm getting money, but I'm not happy. So if I'm not going to get something here, I'm going to go out to Canada and get it. If the British scene's kicking off here and I can, come and learn more here, okay, I'm going to get that. So I'll come back here to get it, if that makes sense. So
100%. Exactly.
So like in many ways, I've always been of the attitude of, if I'm not getting what I want in one place, I'll go get it somewhere else. Cause I just don't like, I'm not the best politicking game person. I'm not,
And a lot of people wait for opportunities to come to them, and that's not the way to do it.
I'm not one to do that. I mean, in many ways, like I don't feel like, I feel like I've never felt like I've had the time, but I think that's a good thing because it makes sure you push yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all with the knowledge of knowing that this has probably been the best. It's a therapy session now, this podcast. It's probably been the best 10 years of my life, to be honest with you, because I
should charge for this, shouldn't I, really?
Yeah.
I should charge you this therapy session. Let's start wrapping things up with
I'll give you back the massive wage. I'll give you back the $1,000 that I got paid for this.
Absolutely.
I could go on for ages, mate. I could go on forever.
We got Richie watching us live at home on YouTube. He says, what was it like working with Johnny Saint and Sid Scala? And of course, I've had Johnny Saint on my show as part of the Legends Masterclass. I went to his home in Rhyl and spent a good afternoon with him. He makes a damn fine cup of tea, and spent a lovely afternoon with him. A wonderful gentleman. But getting the opportunity to work and to train with legends like that, at the Performance Center, which is already stacked with some of the best coaches and the best trainers you can shake a stick at anyway, and the best talent to be around and to learn from. But Johnny Saint is, just in another planet of his own, really, in terms of the knowledge, the experience, the skill level, and getting the chance to spend time with him and train with him, maybe.
Johnny Saint is surely, I'm going to look it up, I think he's like 85 years old, right? Johnny Saint would come to the Performance Center, stand on the side of the ring. I swear to God, he'd bang out like I'm not going to say an hour, because that's probably ridiculous, although I don't put it past him, but he would non-stop be doing, he's 83. It would have been like 80 at the time, right?
Yeah.
he would stand there and bang out his squats non-stop for ages. And I'm like, this guy is 80 years old and he's banging these squats out like no man's
Nobody's
business.
got any excuse.
Yeah, honestly, Johnny Saint, like I met Johnny Saint a few years prior because I went out to Johnny Moss's school out in Cumbria, and I did a seminar with it was with Coach Moss and Johnny Saint. And I learned a lot from him during that seminar because that was a smaller class. But Johnny Saint was great to be around at the PC because you could just jump out and you could ask him, did that look good? Especially when it came to a lot of like, the technical British stuff, the cravats and the holes and like getting in and out of stuff. And he'd always say times 10, you got to times 10 it, i.e. which means you got to make it 10 times bigger. So you got to make everything bigger. So he'd always say times 10. Yeah, he was great. It was just great to pick his ear, but it was, to be honest with you, what a nice man. He was just great to be around. We'd always sit in we had a little kitchen area with a TV set up. So we'd always put some sort of wrestling, and one of the boys would always put on like, I don't know, like some CZW or something crazy hardcore. And then we'd all look at Johnny Saint and be like, what do you make of this, Johnny?
I bet he was not impressed at all.
No, not
but
necessarily. Not really the hold for hold stuff that he's probably used to, but he was good value for a laugh. Johnny was, yeah.
Absolutely. And we had Darren that reached out to us before we went live. Who's been the toughest opponent of your career? Let's be honest. I mean, you faced, some of the biggest and baddest people out there, whether it be on the indies or even in the WWE ring. But any that stand out to you as being the toughest opponent, Darren asks.
God, I've wrestled some big boys. I've wrestled some big boys. Do you know what? As a performer, one of the scariest ones was, and like not scared, like probably was. I mean, to be fair, it was intimidating. It was in Doncaster. I wrestled Lance Archer. Do you remember Lance? You know Lance Archer,
Absolutely.
right? So
Big
this guy is like, he's that tall. He's that tall, and I kind of had a very similar experience when I wrestled Rampage Brown as well at North. There's certain people that have presence about them.
It's aura.
It's presence, right? And like, I remember when I was planning the match with him, with Lance, and I did something similar with Rampage Brown as well. In my mind, psychologically, I was just like, if I'm coming out first and this guy who is 10 times bigger than me is coming out second, my idea to both of them was, especially to Lance Archer, was, because the way I looked at it, I was just like, you're not going to come in the ring, the bell's going to ring, and I'm supposed to like try and make this realistic. What would I actually do? Well, what I'd actually do is I'd suicide dive you on your entrance as you're walking down. You know what I mean? And then get started, and then eventually you'll probably grab hold of me and start beating the shit out of me, right?
Yeah.
But for those few seconds when I seen him walk down, like, it's like you say, it's the aura, it's the presence, like, and then that's what kind of almost takes over you for a second. And I'm seeing this guy, and like, American wrestlers are all so big and tall, and like this, there's big and then there's big. He's walking down, and I'm like, right, that's it. I'm just gonna have to go for it. And I seen him, I was just like, right, off we go. And I just ran back across the road and I just flung myself at him. The guy was so big. I felt like I bounced off him, but like he caught me. But it's like bouncing off someone and then, wrestling him in there. I was just like, I could punch you, I could kick you, I could do whatever. But this guy is just, he was like a fridge. Do you know what I mean?
He's like a tree, isn't he? Yeah, he's huge. I think he's every bit of 6'8".
Yeah. And then when you go up for something against the Lance Archer compared to, I don't know, Mark Andrews, do you know what I mean? Like, when you go up, you're going up, so you're coming all the way down as well. So it's like you got to brace yourself and stuff, and like those splashes in the corner and all that stuff. Like, I was stood in the corner and he came in for a splash, and the guy can move, like he can pick up some speed, and I'm seeing him run from that other corner, full pelt at me, and I'm like, hope for the best here. You know what I mean? And like it was solid. Next, Rampage Brown's the same as well. When I wrestled him, like we were opening the show at North, Thunderstruck. It was like 1,000 people up in Newcastle at Walker Dome. It was the same thing with him. I was just like, well, I'm not going to let the bell ring and lock up here. When you go up and do your pose on the ropes, I'm going to drop kick the shit out of you. Do you know what I mean? So like a big drop kick at the start. Exact same. It's intensity, like big guy intensity. Like I feel like I'm
It's
quite
that
an intense
David and
wrestler.
Goliath story all over again, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But there's some wrestlers that just have it where you're just like, oh, I've got to be there for everything. I've got to make sure, like. But you know, those are the best wrestlers to wrestle, to be honest with you, especially for like, you know, a baby face like myself who like builds his character upon making people care and getting that child and getting the parents and all that stuff is great. But yeah, maybe I'll put both of them there, Lance Archer and Rampage Brown.
Final question for me
Intimidating.
then. Final question for me, because like I say, you had a fantastic 4-year run in NXT UK, and like I say, since then you were red hot on the UK Indies up until the injury. All over Canada, you've come back looking and feeling as good as ever. But thinking back over your 9, nearly 10-year career so far, what are some of the proudest moments that you can really hang your hat on here in 2025 from your career so far?
Oh, this is
Tough
definitely
question, I know.
into a therapy session. You make me cry. How many do you want? Like 3?
Yeah,
Give me like
1,
3.
2, 3, as many as you want. But yeah, just some of the proudest moments that really stand out to you.
One of the craziest ones is when I first. I mean, this is like 2 in 1, but getting signed, right? When I first got the email about the tournament, that was the first indication, right, of like you might wrestle for WWE, and then getting the call to sign my like get offered the contract and signing the contract. You can just put all of that in one. That little period of a month or 2 where that whole process was happening, you can put all that in one, like that. But I sat there and I asked my mum, because I got offered ITV as well, and I was just like, oh, I don't know, I could do World of Sport, I could do WWE, and she just sat there, and she was just like, and she was very discouraging of me wrestling. She was just like, well, what did you want to do as a kid? And I'm sat there waiting to reply to this email, and I'm like, I'm about to do what I wanted to do as a kid that I never thought would be possible. Like you can't put words into that feeling. Do you know what I mean? Signing WWE contract. What the hell?
Yeah.
Probably like apart from like stepping into the ring for the first time, I started wrestling at 25 years old. I had already built a career up in finance, and I was already on my way to like doing quite well in that industry. So literally, like for me, after spending all my life wanting to do this, but not actually having the guts to take that step forward, I think just the first time I stepped into a ring, because for me, that was enough. My main aim was to like just get into the ring, and just it was long. It felt like a long enough journey just to get to that point, to have the guts to be able to do my first training session. Yeah, I mean, now if you ask me now, 8-9 years, like I'm just proud of the career that I've managed to have up until now, because it's only recently when I started thinking about the fact that this is my 10th year in the business, and like it's the best 10 years that I could have asked for. Look, I've got a million things that I want to do. I've got a million things that I'm sure I'm going to be frustrated at and pissed off about, and opportunities are going to come and go. And, you know, I'll see other people doing well, and I'm going to, you know what I mean? All those things are still yet to come, but I can't, you know, sat here right now, if I was to look back at it, I think I've probably had one of the best 10 years of a career any British wrestler's ever had.
Yeah,
I don't know that.
yeah.
I don't know that many British wrestlers that got signed 2 years within the business to WWE contract.
It's a dream scenario, isn't it? It's a dream scenario. And
Yeah. And the craziest part of it is, like I said, like I still feel like I've not reached that level that I feel like I can. I think I've got, wrestling's becoming very global. I think there's a market for someone like myself. I want to work on trying to get out to places like Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I want to go wrestle in India and Pakistan, and go wrestle in front of the people that I was brought in front of, because I feel like there's a market there. I want to do more stuff in Canada. Like this is away from any contracts or any TV opportunities. Yeah. Like it's been nice to be able to become a world traveling professional wrestler. I really like traveling anyway, so you know there's a lot more skin in the game, but 10 years in, can't complain. A few injuries along.
The world is your oyster, and especially with this newly rebooted looking fantastic Amir Jordan. But before we let you go, for my audience at home, and for anybody that has watched this fantastic interview with Amir Jordan, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. But where can we follow you on social media, my friend? Now, scrolling along the bottom of the screen, We've got your Instagram, we've got your X, so you can give that a bit of a shout out and a bit of a plug. We've also got your big cartel and your booking email address. So the floor is yours, my friend. Where can we reach out? Where can we say hi, learn more about Amir Jordan, and buy some merch maybe as well?
Yeah, so amirjordan.bigcartel.com is for merch. I watch this space. I'm working on releasing a pro wrestling tees store as well, which will be more useful for people out in the US, but it's also available for people in the UK as well. Twitter, X, I am Amir Jordan, if anyone's still using that. But mainly, I'm active on Instagram, and I am now on TikTok. So please follow me, Johners, on TikTok. I put up content all the time. So it's I am Amir Jordan.
I stopped using TikTok a while back. I stopped using it. I'm gonna have to get the app again.
Where it's at, man. It's where it's at. I've learned this through my injury. I was like, oh, where is it? Like, X is hard to get anything going on these days. True. It's hard to get anything. Although, mind you, I put that promo up on Twitter and it actually did some really good like engagement and numbers. But I feel like that was going to do that anyway because it was quite good. But yeah, like TikTok's where it's at apparently. So I'm on that TikTok train. But honestly, make noise when I come out. Do you know what I mean? Like that's all that really. If you follow me on the socials and stuff, but like keep supporting this journey because I want to, and the promo and stuff was a part of it, but going forward as well, I am going to start documenting a lot more of my journey as a professional wrestler. Like I want everyone to come along for the ride of this guy that has to work a normal job. That's just got this professional wrestling dream. And, it's almost like sometimes I just want to almost be like, I'm going to make it, but I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. But if you come along for the ride, it'll be a good one. Do you know what I mean? And like, that's really kind of what I want to take people up along with here is take them along for the ride, whatever ride I'm going on, whether it falls with me flat on my face or not. Like I said, I've already lived my dream. Everything else is just, trying to get there and make some friends along the way.
I wish you nothing but the best, and everything I've seen in person and doing my research on you, you look in $1 million, and you got all that experience, you've got all that in-ring acumen as well. But Amir Jordan, you've been a wonderful guest for episode 377, and I just want to thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Oh, thank you, mate. Thanks very much, and thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.